Welcome into FFPC Insider Access here live on the Better Sports Network. My name is Eric Balkman. You can connect with me on the X at Eric Balkman, EricBalkman. You know me from the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, and of course the Fantasy Football Players Championship. MyFFPC.com is where to go for that. Tonight I'm joined by a master of all trades, a guy who has his toes in the water of nearly every lake, pond, and stream there is when it comes to fantasy football. You connect, you've seen his work on places like RotoBaller and FantasyPros, and you connect with him on X at Ammirante TFJ. He is Frank Ammirante. Frank, good evening. The pride of the Great White North joining me tonight. So glad to have you.
Oh, it's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to talk football with you.
Yeah, it's exciting, and I don't want to give you short shrift here. Like you do a lot of work for a lot of different sites. I mentioned RotoBaller and FantasyPros. We'll give you an opportunity to talk a little bit more about some of the other sites at the end as well. But let the viewers know where else they can find your work right now, what you've been doing.
Yeah, so aside from fantasy football, fantasy baseball content, there you can also find some betting content at the game day that I do, thegameday.com. Some more work. Pro Football Network. I did some work there, but mostly where you want to predominantly find my fantasy content will be at RotoBaller and a bit at FantasyPros.
So there you go. FantasyPros and RotoBaller is most of it. And you do baseball. You do a lot of baseball too.
Yeah, that's how I actually started with content. I started with fantasy baseball, and then like that and football were my two favorites to play, and it works nicely because the seasons don't overlap too well. Right. So I've always stuck with it. And, fantasy baseball is more of a marathon. Fantasy football is the sprint, but both are good in their own ways.
Absolutely. 100% they are. Fantasy football, also good when you're playing at FFPC. I want to remind everybody, we have Dynasty and Empire Orphans available right now, $77 all the way up to $5,000. Many of those are discounted right now. Check it out at myffpc.com. We also launched earlier this week our two Never-Too-Early Best Ball tournaments. The Classic is $125 entry fee with a $40,000 grand prize. The Never-Too-Early Superflex Best Ball tournament is $35, but you're still eligible for a $10,000 grand prize. Those are going to run all the way up to the start of the NFL draft in April. And then, of course, the two other contests we launched this week, straight from the jungle. The FFPC Big Gorilla is back for a second straight year. $350 entry, $1 million grand prize. Don't forget about the 7 Bananas promotion, where if you keep getting that 7 pick randomly in your drafts, you're going to keep winning free leagues on the FFPC all the way up to and including a free Jungle Safari for 4. The Early Rampage tournament going on right now as well. $25,000 grand prize. Get in while you can, and you're basically entering 2 tournaments for the price of 1. We also offer the Baby Gorilla this year as well. Basically, managed league format, same exact format as the FFPC Big Gorilla. This one is just $125 to enter, and it features a $100,000 grand prize. The Dynasties, the Never-Too-Earlys, and the Gorillas, all available at myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Shout out to our producer, Sean Engel, tonight. Let's get into it, and I want to kick things off with you, Frank, with the New England Patriots. And we can spin this into a Drake Maye conversation, but really I want to talk about the Patriots as a whole. Drake Maye this past week against the Houston Texans, 16-27. He threw for 3 touchdowns. He did throw a pick, but they end up beating Houston by 12. He fumbled 4 times in this game. He lost half of them, which is pretty crazy. And I don't think we talk about it a whole lot because we think about the turnover machine that was C.J. Stroud, both in the wild card round and in the divisional round. They faced the Broncos in the AFC Championship game, a Broncos team that's probably going to be without Bo Nix. If we could focus this on what we know about the Patriots for drafts next year, and as far as dynasty goes, I think we can get into a little bit of that as well. Drake Maye is going to shoot up super high from where he was in drafts last year. Trevion Henderson, not Omarion Hampton, not Ashton Genty, was the lone running back as a finalist for Rookie of the Year from the NFL this year. So I think we have to talk about him and sort of this cavalcade of pass catchers that New England has. I don't know if they go to bat in 2026, week 1, with sort of like this same conglomerate of receivers. We could see some action there. As you look at the Patriots going forward, Frank, not necessarily for this weekend and then the Super Bowl, but when we start drafting, and we have started drafting at the FFPC, how are you handling these guys? Is there any certain players on this team that sticks out to you as like, wow, I should really look at these guys for next year, or vice versa? I'm staying away from these players right now in drafts.
I think one key takeaway I have with the Patriots is Drake Maye was phenomenal this season. And you combine that with Lamar Jackson having a down year, Jaden Daniels having a down year. You may see Drake Maye get taken like QB2, QB3. And then if that's the case, I would just rather wait a round or two and take Jaden Daniels and give him a shot with the new offensive coordinator, David Blau, who's an up-and-comer. I think Drake Maye is going to be at a peak price where you just could take a shot on Caleb Williams later in year 2 of the Ben Johnson era. So my real takeaway there is just that I don't want to pay the premium off this huge year for Drake Maye.
The ADP data that I cite, I always give credit to FantasyMojo.com. Darren Armani, our good buddy there, the godfather of the Pros versus Joes Challenge. FantasyMojo.com at FantasyMojo on X. He has, and I'll cite the ADP for the Never-Too-Early Best Ball tournament right now. We have almost a dozen drafts in, and I can tell you, as far as Drake Maye goes, he is quarterback 2 right now, Frank.
Yeah,
he has moved all the way up to the 402 behind Josh Allen. He has moved ahead of Jaden Daniels, Joe Burrow, and Lamar Jackson, who's actually surprisingly quarterback 3. I'm a little surprised to hear that. We'll get into that more in the second segment when we go through the coaching carousel. But yeah, Drake Maye already at quarterback 2. So good call on your part there. And I think that, there is a lot to like, right? I think that, the fact that he is as efficient with his arm as he was with his legs this year, there's a lot to like about that. And I don't want to hold this against New England because you can only play the teams that you're scheduled to, right? You can't go out and schedule heavy hitters to make toughen your team up and make you look better in the playoffs. I do think that the schedule is going to be significantly tougher next year. And at that point too, that's another reason to like, hey, 402 for Drake Maye, I'm going to find somebody else I like better there.
Yeah, and it's not so much like I love what Drake Maye did all year. It's just that I could take a quarterback who could easily outscore Drake Maye, who has the same ceiling, like a round later or two. It's just about playing the price there. But also, the Patriots have a great defense. They may not get forced into so many shootouts. That's like a slight downside. I mean, it's not a huge thing. For me, it's just more of the fact that you're buying at the peak price off the huge year, and there's some really talented quarterbacks coming off disappointing years that will come at a discount. But another player on the Patriots maybe that is a little discounted that we may be overlooking, like Kayshon Boutte had a great start to the season, right? Mm-hmm. And then he got banged up. I feel like maybe that threw his whole year off, and now he's healthy again, making plays in the playoffs. He may be someone to look at, in best ball. He may not be too expensive, even as like a wide receiver 4 type. I think I'd be willing to take a look at him there.
What do you think they do at wide receiver in the offseason? Because they have Diggs, but he's going to be another year older, right? They do have Henry, who caught 60 balls this year, so it's not like they have nobody at tight end. And then they have as you mentioned, Kayshon Boutte, Demario Douglas, Matt Collins. We'll see if he's back as well. You think New England will make any kind of splash at wide receiver?
As much as myself and probably a lot of other non-Eagles fans would want the Patriots to reunite A.J. Brown with Mike Vrabel, I just feel like that may not happen just because from what I've read, like it would be a huge cap hit or a cap penalty on the Eagles if they trade Brown this year. So I feel like with a new offensive coordinator, they'll appease Brown and he won't be traded. So, and I do think Brandon Ayuk, if he's healthy, will sign with the Commanders and reunite with Jaden Daniels, his former college teammate. So you think about that, like, I don't know if they're going to break the bank on a receiver. Like, who else is free agent? Rashid Shaheed. He might be a little overpriced just because of his speed and ability to take the top off of defense. But to that end, like, maybe they don't make such a splash at receiver.
They may not. They may not. We'll see what happens as far as how deep they get. If they get to the Super Bowl, if they win the Super Bowl, I think there's going to be less pressure on them to do that. But if they do come up short against Denver or in the Super Bowl, and it's because they didn't have that alpha wide receiver out there, then we could see them make more of a splash play. Free agency, I don't know. I mean, like there's not a lot of big names out there, but a trade, perhaps, you never know with what happens in New England. Okay, moving forward, the opponent for the Patriots this past weekend were the Houston Texans, led by C.J. Stroud. And I say led, I should say, very loosely, because I don't know what he was leading him to in the postseason. Dude fumbles 5 times in the wild card game. They win that game by 20-some points, which is insane. And then this past week, he was a turnover machine again, Frank. CJ Stroud said, and this is according to FoxSports.com, says he's, quote, still getting adjusted to the team's offense. He said there's no excuses for throwing 4 picks on 47 attempts against the Patriots, but that he's still trying to get comfortable in this Nick Caley scheme, who obviously was the first-year offensive coordinator for Houston. 65% completion percentage, just over 3,000 yards, 19 touchdowns, 8 picks, and that was actually significantly, I shouldn't say significantly, but marginally better than he was in 2024 after he really outperformed in 2023. Now, by May 1st, the Texans are going to have to decide whether or not to use this 5th-year option on their signal caller, and DeMeco Ryans did not want to discuss that with the media after the loss to New England. He is still 24 years old. He is still growing as an athlete, as a quarterback. I have serious misgivings about Stroud. I feel like I fell into the trap year one of like, hey, Stroud's the real deal. Houston doesn't have to worry about it. They got their guy. Now I'm not so sure they do have their guy, Frank. How do we handle guys like Stroud? And maybe more specifically, how do we handle the pass catchers like Nico Collins? And we'll get into Tank Dell in the third segment as well. But the 2 Iowa State guys in Higgins and Knoll, Dalton Schultz, when we think about drafting these players, and it sounds like Nick Caley's coming back for the Texans in year 2. I don't know, man. I'm pretty bearish on this whole offense because in large part of the performance the last 2 years, especially this year, of one CJ Stroud.
Yeah, I agree with you. For one, like, I'm not too optimistic on Nick Caley. It just seems like you think about their struggles on offense early in the season and how long it took Caley to incorporate Jaden Higgins more. They keep using Xavier Hutchinson, even though the offense was completely underwhelming. They seem to really like to run the ball. So if the Texans do get an upgrade at running back, because I don't think Woody Marks is good enough to be this bell cow. He's more profiles as like a change of pace type. But let's say, there's some good free agent running backs, Travis Etienne, Kenneth Walker, Breece Hall. If they landed in Houston, I think they could do well because it seems like Nick Caley wants to have that, ball control type of offense and run the football. So to that end, Nico Collins is probably going to be priced high again. Maybe not to the same level as this past season. No, definitely not. Probably, late second. And I'd be a little hesitant there, as talented as Nico is, just because it just seems like you're not going to get these kind of shootouts in this offense. A, the defense is insanely good. B, Nick Caley seems like a conservative type of play caller that want to run the ball. And to your point, CJ Stroud is really underwhelmed. I think after year one with Stroud, we thought, hey, this is a franchise quarterback who could thrive in most circumstances. But now we're starting to realize he's one of those quarterbacks who needs that stud play caller, a good offensive line, in order to really make an impact. So with Caley likely coming back, I mean, how much can they really upgrade the offensive line in one offseason? It's hard to get too excited about this passing game, at least.
Yeah, I think I didn't even mention the line. I think that's a great point as well. Because while a lot of this is on the performance of Stroud, part of the reason he performed so badly was because that offensive line was just so bad. And to your point too, it's tough to just, unless you're the Bears, it's really tough to flip that around in 1 year, right? So they have the opportunity to make some changes in the draft and free agency to upgrade the offense. The defense is obviously on point right now. They look really good. A lot of playmakers there. But if they can fix this offense, I mean, they've been to the playoffs the last 3 years. It's not like they're that close, or it's not like they're that far away from competing. So they get a couple of playmakers and some protectors. They maybe can take that next step.
And they could even, one thing I want to add, like, because Stroud finished the year so turnover happy, what if they could easily just be like, let's have him be really conservative and just run the ball, invest in a running back, and then it's even worse for Nico Collins. So that's just a little tidbit I wanted to add in there.
Yeah, Nico Collins right now, I should bring this up as well. He is going as the wide receiver 9 in the Never-Too-Early Best Ball tournament with the FFPC right now at the 210, behind Nabers and Jefferson, ahead of Rice, Olave, and Pickens. So that's a name too that may be being overdrafted right now as well as we look at that. We don't need to spend a whole lot of time on this, but I did want to bring it up, Frank. The Pittsburgh Steelers are open to Aaron Rodgers returning in 2026. This according to Adam Schefter. Now, Schefter also said it's unlikely that he would come back to Pittsburgh after Mike Tomlin decided to leave the team. But the Steelers players, according to Schefter, are more than open to him returning. They want him back, and maybe this is more of an indictment on Pittsburgh just not having a good backup plan right now, that they want to get Rodgers in there. He's 42 years old. 23rd out of 36 qualifying quarterbacks in EPA per dropback this past year. And I think if you look at some of the other stats with Rodgers, they were underwhelming, but I think you have to consider everything that was around him, or maybe that wasn't around him. Like we heard Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson were going to take a step forward. I was always bearish on that because of the offensive coordinator. Number 2 wide receiver in an Arthur Smith offense, to me, does not really get me that excited. And then you had this triumvirate of tight ends with Washington and Freiermuth and who's the other one I'm forgetting? Washington.
Jonnu Smith.
Jonnu Smith. Yeah, exactly. You had that triumvirate of tight ends there, that if you have 3 tight ends, you probably have none. And then DK Metcalf, obviously, just really failed to have this connection with Rodgers. Metcalf had career lows in most of his stats as well. So I think like we cannot punish Rodgers for everything that he was not capable of doing last year. At the same time, I would be interested in him in a super flex format, obviously, even a single quarterback format as a backup quarterback, but I got to see something more from Pittsburgh. If Arthur Smith leaves, we got to find out who the OC is. They do need to add some more playmakers on that offense. Kenneth Gainwell could move on. I do like Jaylen Warren. As of right now, we'll see what happens with the coordinator hire, and they got to hire a head coach as well there too. So we'll see what happens there. As it stands right now, Frank, I'm just kind of down on Pittsburgh right now. Even if they hit the lottery and hire this really amazing play caller, and I don't know who's out there right now that would get me all of a sudden very excited to draft Steelers. So I'm kind of down on this offense as well, with or without Rodgers. Your take on Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I think in moving on from Mike Tomlin, the Steelers really just need to hit the reset button. They need to rebuild, and that means not bringing back Aaron Rodgers. I know this quarterback class isn't much to write home about this upcoming draft, but look at the Saints with Tyler Shuck, and he might be something. He might be a competent starter long term. You never know with quarterbacks. You may hit. So they can just take one in the late or mid first, or there probably isn't really one that level, but in the second round, and just see what happens. And just they need to hit that reset button. Like this annual first round exit, it's just not cutting it. So we need to see really who they hire at head coach. I know I've seen Chris Shula, the Rams DC, linked to the Steelers. Also, I saw there was some talk of the Rams, I think not offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, one of the coaches on the staff. He's young. I got the name slipping me at the moment, but it feels like the best move for the Steelers is to get that young coach, and just because they do like to keep their coach, as we saw with Tomlin and Cowher, for years and years. So they're probably looking for a really long-term solution. That's just the Steeler way. So I think it's going to be one of those Rams assistants, and then we can see from there who they bring in the OC. But to your point, I'm not interested in this offense. It's just a lot of moving parts. We need to see. This team's probably going to be a lot worse next season as they try to rebuild.
Was the quarterback's coach Dave Ragone? Is that who you're thinking?
No, wait. It was passing game coordinator.
Okay.
I've seen here. I'm gonna pull him up. Rams passing.
Oh, yeah, that's Nate Shieldhouse.
Yes,
yeah.
I've seen some talk of him to the Steelers.
And I also heard he's in talks with the Browns about their head coaching job too. He's a popular name right now for sure.
Yeah, so I just saw an article that apparently Shieldhouse had an impressive interview with the Steelers. So, he's a young coach. That would be the hire I'd be getting behind, because, for how many years has it been with the Steelers have this vanilla offense, their win with defense in the running game? It's time for them to modernize the team and have that kind of, innovative play caller, that young stud. I think this would be the right hire for them, and that would make me a little more excited.
You have the opportunity for that now too, because this is the ultimate fresh start. Tomlin's out after 2 decades. You have the opportunity to do a lot of cool things that you haven't done before. that really hasn't been the Steelers' way. And now maybe the Steelers can create a new Steelers' way.
Exactly.
2026 and beyond. I'll tell you what, the new Chicago Bears way is something to be very excited about if you're a Bears fan or if you own any of these guys in Dynasty or you're drafting them in fantasy football. I want to spend a decent amount of time on the Bears here, and I'll kick things off with Caleb Williams, Frank. 23 of 42, 257 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did throw 3 picks in that game against the Rams, which is wild because I don't really remember. I mean, I know that he threw the one in overtime to Cam Curl that ultimately decided the game with the Rams kicking the game-winning field goal off that. I don't remember any of the picks besides that one because the play to Komet was so unbelievable. And this is why the NFL I don't want to say I've soured on the NFL because that's not the right term. I just knew that Caleb Williams is going to make an incredible play in this game. So when I should have been like, oh my God, when he threw that play to Cole Kmet in the end zone. And I was just kind of like, this is what he does. This is what the Bears do, at least this season. That's what the Bears did. But as far as Williams goes, what's so exciting about him is that he is making these plays right now that only a handful of quarterbacks in the NFL can make. And the shortcomings with him or the stuff that you don't like is the boneheadedness, the plays that he should be able to make that he doesn't. The easy completions, the simple decisions of knowing when to throw into a tight window, knowing when to check it down. It's stuff like this that most quarterbacks that aren't even quarterbacks in the NFL can do. My whole thing with Caleb Williams is that's going to come. That's going to come with repetition. That's going to come with experience. And the fact that he's already making these crazy plays, we're talking about an extremely high ceiling with him. It totally seems, at least, again, small sample size is 1 season, a lot can change, but it totally seems that Ben Johnson has been able to unlock this in a way that Matt Eberflus never could, right? Caleb Williams talking about how the coaches never even watched film with him. Like he had to watch film on his own, right? There was just not that support system for him. And now we're seeing it with Johnson, who seems to be a very intelligent coach, a bright offensive mind, and a guy that is really paired up with a great quarterback here. It seems weird to say it on the surface that a Chicago Bears quarterback, a franchise that still has not had a 4,000-yard quarterback in their history of 3,000 years or however long the Bears have been around. It's weird to say this, but the pairing of Johnson and Caleb Williams has me very excited about Caleb Williams going forward, not only for Dynasty, but for redraft. Right now in the Never-Too-Early tournament, I'm surprised, if I'm looking at this right, I'm surprised to see, oh, come on, he's got a, I don't even know. This is horrible radio. I apologize for everybody. He is quarterback 10 right now in the Never-Too-Early tournament. Quarterback 10 at the 802 on average, Frank. That is behind Dak Prescott, Justin Herbert, Jackson Dart, Jalen Hurts. He's behind all these guys right now. And I feel like if I'm in this tournament and I'm drafting, I'd love to get Caleb Williams as my number 1 quarterback, and I can wait until the 8th round to do it. It's insane. Sky's the limit for him. I'm excited about him from a fantasy football standpoint, Frank.
Super excited because in year 1 with Ben Johnson, it's a tough scheme to learn. It came off a disappointing rookie year. Caleb did. You would have thought there'd be growing pains, and there were, but Caleb plays such a fantasy-friendly game. Where he finished in fantasy football points per game this year, QB 8. We saw some high spike weeks, 24.2, 29.1, 36.7 points. He can make some big plays with his legs. He makes these crazy throws. The young offense is the rookies will get more involved in year 2. Colston Loveland, Luther Burden. Sky's the limit. QB 10, I'll be way all over that. He'll be probably my most targeted quarterback. Price will probably, increase maybe a little bit, but I don't know, maybe not too much because there's reasons to be excited about Jackson Dart. Jalen Hurts has a track record. So excuse me, QB 10. That's going to be my most rostered quarterback. I love Caleb going to year 2.
Let me ask you this. Let's do a quick would you rather. Would you rather and let's throw ADP out the window. Would you rather draft Caleb Williams or Dak Prescott? And then I'm saying in a redraft scenario.
I'd rather go Caleb Williams because of the rushing, and I prefer drafting Dak when he's coming off a bit of a disappointing year like he was coming into this past season. Like Dak was going, especially in early drafts and early best ball last year, he's going quite late, I believe outside of the top 12 at one point.
Mm-hmm.
But now, Dak had a solid year. George Pickens looks great. They're probably going to keep him, franchise tag. So, perception is up on Dak again. So even without that, I'm taking Caleb. It's just a footnote with these pocket passers like Dak. I like them when they're at a discount.
More to come on Mike McDaniel to Los Angeles. Caleb Williams or Justin Herbert, Frank?
See, that's a great one because I'm going to love Herbert too with that Mike McDaniel hire. But here's what the tiebreaker is for me on that. We've already seen Caleb Williams with Ben Johnson, and we've been excited about it. We haven't seen Justin Herbert with Mike McDaniel. We don't know. Mike McDaniel is a great play caller, but what if Jim Harbaugh has a bit of influence and they still run the ball a lot, or little risk factors just because we haven't seen it. So as much as I love Herbert with McDaniel, I'm still taking Caleb.
Last one, Caleb Williams or Jackson Dart?
Love what Jackson Dart showed. Love that obviously he has Malik Nabers, but I'm going to stick with Caleb Williams there. I think he's going to really show more growth as a passer in year 2 with Ben Johnson. And Caleb has the same running upside as Dart does.
Okay. All right. It's interesting. We can explore this more. But I want to get into Luther Burden, his top target. At least I assume it's going to be his top target going forward in not only 2026, but beyond. Kind of quiet against the Rams. He does see 7 targets. He only catches 3 of them for 24 yards. And he did get off to a slow start this season, obviously hampered. I think it was a hamstring that was keeping him from practicing in training camp and OTAs and so on and so forth. But in his last 4 regular season games, 21 catches, 324 yards, and a touchdown on 26 targets. He was targeted 14 times in the postseason in those 2 games. And this is interesting because it's a young quarterback zeroing in on a rookie receiver with everything on the line. 0.258 targets per route run over his last 4 regular season and 2 postseason games. I was already of the opinion, Frank, as the regular season was drawing to a close, I said, I'm not going to have any Luther Burden on my rosters next year. Not because I don't like him, not because I don't think he's going to be awesome. I just think he's going to be super overdrafted. But maybe I'm wrong. I'll tell you the ADP on him. You tell me what you think of it, and you tell me what you think about Burden in general going forward this coming year. He's wide receiver 25 in the Never-Too-Early Best Ball tournament, going off the board in the early 5th round. He's behind Devonta Smith. He's behind Jalen Waddle. He's ahead of Cortland Sutton and Mike Evans. So people are drafting him in the FFPC right now just as a very high-end wide receiver 3, very low-end wide receiver 2. And I saw that, and I'm kind of like, you know what? Maybe I will get some Burden. I thought people would be higher on him than this. Maybe I'm just higher on Burden than the general public.
Yeah, for one with Burden, finally when he got more of a role, he started to make big plays. That game against the 49ers was awesome. That deep touchdown won me a league. But, he's so good after the catch as well, Luther Burden. It just could be the case, Ben Johnson handpicked this receiver, and his role grew as the season progressed. And now in year 2, you have to be excited about it. But when you draft Luther Burden, even at receiver 25, 5th round, you got to go in there thinking this could be a real boomer bust type of pick. This may take a few weeks to get going, even though it's year 2, or this may be inconsistent production. So you want to build your team accordingly in redraft, where you don't want to be waiting on receiver and then you have Burden as your receiver 1, or you want that kind of higher floor receiver to pair with him just in case Burden, has that really volatile production that could be possible.
The other thing to consider in regards to drafting Burden is Rome Odunze. I don't know if DJ Moore is going to be on this team next year. I would say it's probably less than a 50% chance that he returns to Chicago. But Odunze will be there. And the report that we got from The Athletic, this would have been on Tuesday, Frank, Odunze telling the press he's not going to need surgery on his foot. The quote from Odunze here about playing with this foot injury. It was rough, man. It was rough. I'm not going to sit here and say I can barely, it is what it is. We play through injuries. It's part of the game. I'm not going to sit here and make excuses about the foot, but something I was dealing with. 2 for 44 in the wild card, 2 for 44 in the divisional round. I think the other thing that we have to understand, as exciting as Luther Burden is, Odunze was crushing it at the start of the season. Now, granted, that's when Burden was still kind of getting his feet wet and, adjusting to the speed of the NFL and so on and so forth. But then Odunze, when he got this foot injury, which he decided to play through when he could. I mean, he did miss some games. I wonder if like the production with Odunze wasn't necessarily a reflection of Burden taking over the number one spot. It was a reflection on this dude couldn't get separation. He couldn't get open. He was playing on a bad wheel. And in this offense, that is really going to affect your numbers. Obviously Loveland had something to do with it too, with his rise. But I do think that when we come into the start of the 2026 season and Odunze is healthy, we shouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden we're talking at the end of September like, oh God, I guess Odunze really was the number one in this offense and Burden is this high functioning number two. I remain bullish on Odunze. I'm going to blame a large portion of his lack of production on this foot injury, and maybe that's to my own detriment, but I feel like I'm going to get Odunze in a lot of spots this coming year, and I feel good about it.
Yeah, I like that take a lot. Like you said, Odunze was balling at the beginning of the year, and we see it all the time with players playing through injury and it really affecting their performance. And if you take the position you're taking, it could really be that you hit a home run because he's going to be undervalued. Everyone's excited about Burden. Everyone's excited about Loveland. People will be concerned that maybe, Odunze can't, like the Bears offense may not support 3 pass catchers drafted high. So you might get a discount on him. And that'd be a great, I'm with you. I'd make that move as well.
Odunze, wide receiver 31 at the 6'11 right now in the Never-Too-Early tournament. Actually smack dab in between two rookies. Jordan Tyson right ahead of him, Carnell Tate right behind him, and Makai Lemon actually not that far behind him as well. So Odunze seems to be going at the spot where people are willing to take their first shot at the rookie class as well. Now, a rookie that was really unbelievable this year, and obviously his torrid end to the season is really affecting his draft stock or his redraft draft stock right now, is Colston blanking Loveland. Holy cow, Frank. This guy was just, especially you think about this too, in the FFPC where it's tight end premium, where you're getting 1.5 points per catch. Loveland was an absolute beast. In the divisional loss to the Rams wasn't all that great. 4 for 56, 10 targets. He catches 4 of them. He crushed it against Green Bay in the wild card, and he was crushing it towards the end of the season as well. If we look at the Never-Too-Early ADP, he has moved all the way up. I mean, it's crazy. Okay, I think I'm going to set it up like this. Here are the top 8 tight ends in the Never-Too-Early Best Ball tournament. Maybe I'm giving too much away here, but I don't care. McBride, Bowers, 1 and 2. No argument there. They were 1 and 2 last year. But if we look at 3 through 8 and think about where we were at on these tight ends at this point last year, Loveland is 3, Tyler Warren is 4, Harold Fannin is 5, Kyle Pitts is 6.
Wow, that's cool. What a change.
Yeah. Tucker Kraft has fallen a little bit. He was going really high. Now he's fallen to tight end 7. And then Kenyon Sadiq, the rookie out of Oregon, is tight end 8 right now. Just crazy. The landscape, how they've changed, how it's changed with tight ends going into this season. But I guess that's what happens in fantasy football. Specifically talking about Loveland here, I want to zero in on this. Tight end 3 at the 301. Again, tight end premium scoring. Does that seem like too rich for Frank Ammirante, or would you be willing to pay that price?
I'm willing to pay it. I mean, the only tight ends I'd rather have than Colston Loveland, like you said, are obviously McBride and Bowers. Same reasons we were high on Burden, we're high on Loveland. Obviously, Loveland tore it up in the second half as he got more acclimated to the Ben Johnson offense. Year 2, you got to expect a bit of growth. There's a chance he's the, most productive pass catcher in this offense, even over the receivers. So I'm willing to pay that premium. We saw, he was a great prospect coming out of the draft, and then he delivered in his age 21 season. That kind of production at such a young age is really notable. And in an offense that I'm going to want a lot of pieces of because I'm so high on what they're doing with the Bears, yeah, I'm totally cool paying that price for Loveland.
I don't normally, I don't know. Like, I shouldn't say I don't normally do elite tight ends in my league, because if I can get like a top 3 or 4 guy, I usually take advantage of that. And if in FFPC in the Never-Too-Early tournament, McBride and Bowers both going in the first round, if I don't get one of them, yeah, I'd have to take a long, hard look at Loveland early in the third or in the late second. And then there's quite a drop off. You're looking at almost 2 rounds after that is when Tyler Warren goes as the tight end 4. So Bears offense, you can't be bearish about the Bears offense this offseason. I'm very excited to draft those guys. We'll see what happens with that ground game too. If they keep Swift, the role that Monangai is going to have. But clearly the Bears offense in a much better place right now than it was at this point last year. Christian McCaffrey, the ageless wonder, maybe starting to show some age now, Frank. 11 carries, 35 yards against the Seahawks. He did catch 5 passes for 39 yards and suffered a stinger. I know he didn't start the second half in this one. He came back after Brian Robinson started the second half. But the Niners, I mean, I don't know how much we can gauge from McCaffrey this game because the Niners were just so beat up and they just fell apart in this game. If we look at the season for McCaffrey, 102 catches for 924 yards and 7 touchdowns. I'm blown away by those numbers from a running back. I love it from a wide receiver. You're telling me I could get this from a running back? It was crazy. He also did not perform the way that we've been accustomed to seeing him perform from a running standpoint. Minus 27.9 rushing EPA, minus 0.5 rushing yards over expected per attempt. That was 4th worst among all the running backs that qualified for the stat. The fact that he caught so many balls, Frank, I think like it might suck me back in this season. But we're talking about a dude like, how old is he now? He's going to turn 30 coming up pretty quick, I believe. I'll check that.
Yeah, he is. Just checked.
Okay. So you have, so all that stuff with the pass catching, we love it. But now we look at the price tag. Running back 3 at the 108 in the Never-Too-Early tournament. This is ahead of JT. It's ahead of Achane, James Cook, Hampton, Jeremiah Love. I don't know, man. A 30-year-old running back in the mid-first round, I don't know if I'm a strong enough man to do that. And this is the price that he's going at right now. How do you feel about the price tag from the current price tag for McCaffrey for 2026?
McCaffrey's going to be one of my biggest avoids of 2026. Like you said, running back entering his age 30 season, showing some decrease in burst as a runner, coming off a season where he's had 400 plus touches and he's dealt with injuries several times throughout his career. The time to buy McCaffrey are when people were worried, like coming into last year. I know in early best ball that were non-FFPC, where it was not tight end premium, McCaffrey was like early second round pick. And then, he's pushed a little down in FFPC because the Bowers and McBrides of the world and the tight end scoring, but probably in other formats, McCaffrey's going to be going maybe top 5. Yeah. And, it's too much of a risk. The time to buy him is when people are panicking. Oh, he did nothing for me last year. I don't want him, that kind of thing. I'm not going to buy him off such a big season. It's just too much risk at the age and the injury risk.
Speaking of injury risk and age, I don't think that they're as strong with George Kittle, but I think we can start talking about it a little bit. Kittle tore his Achilles and underwent surgery to repair it, and apparently it went very well. Kyle Shanahan said that Kittle's in good spirits. 32 years old now for George Kittle. He's under contract through 2029. He got a 4-year extension last April. I am very nervous about this player, given his age and given all these different young tight ends that are not dealing with an injury, that maybe aren't as susceptible to an injury because of their age, like Kittle would be. And quite frankly, I don't know what point Kittle's coming back in 2026. I know he's hopeful for week 1. Yeah, I mean, we're all hoping that, but I don't know if it's going to happen. And people are drafting him as the tight end 13 right now at the 9-12 in the Never-Too-Early Best Ball tournament. It's ahead of Brenton Strange. It's ahead of Dallas Goedert. I don't know, man. Like, if I'm drafting Kittle, I think I would be wanting to draft him like the drafters are taking him right now in the FFPC as a backup tight end. I don't want to have him as my starting tight end. But there is some upside of being able to deploy him. You think about FFPC having that dual flex, so you could easily flex him out, in your lineup when he does come back in October, November, or December. My biggest concern right now is obviously health and what he looks like coming back. Secondary concern, Frank, could be a roster clogger. I'm going to have to draft him and then keep him on my roster for God knows how long until he's ready to go. And then I don't know what type of player he's going to be when he comes back. I think Kittle's another avoid for me, like McCaffrey is for both of us. I don't know how you feel about Kittle in this offense.
Yeah, wrong side of 30, serious injury, Achilles injury. Like, can't really expect week 1. I mean, even if he did come back in week 1, you have to think it would take a few weeks for him to get rolling. But so if the more likely scenario happens where he comes back maybe in October, mid-October, then when in his first game back, you're not going to really trust him yet. So like you said, it's a roster clogger for like 6 weeks probably. And, I would bet against him looking like himself for the entire year. It probably takes a full year for him to get back into the swing of things and looking like he might produce a little bit, but not to the same level beforehand. I don't trust it. And I know it's like you said tight end 13, but the way I'm going to approach it is looking for Bowers or Loveland and paying up at tight end. I don't think I'm going to really need to take like that swing on Kittle as my backup. I could, maybe take a shot on, I don't like a lot of the mid-rounders, so I'm trying to think here. But
well, I'll tell you, like some of the guys that are going. I mean, I mentioned Strange and Goddard are going right after him. Gadsden, Kincaid.
See there, right there. That's what I would do. I would take Gadsden. Like Gadsden, even though he slowed down, like what he did as a rookie is pretty impressive for a rookie tight end. He was very efficient. He's a downfield threat. Now Mike McDaniel's there. That's the move I would make over Kittle as my backup tight end because you have a young player. He's healthy and he's, hey, look at Kittle as a rookie. It's not like he tore it up. What if Gadsden becomes the next star tight end? We don't know. So you can make that bet and wait a little bit instead of taking Kittle off such a serious injury.
It's a young man's game, right? Even without the injury, some people would probably be taking Gadsden, and yet Mike McDaniel there now as the OC. So I think that it's very, very good for Gadsden there over Kittle. Kind of it's a sad situation with Zach Charbonnet, but a very bizarre situation for the Seattle backfield as we are drafting for 2026. Mara Dooley reported that Mike McDonald stated Zach Charbonnet is undergoing surgery after he tore his ACL against the 49ers. Rushed for season high 730 yards and 12 touchdowns this season, 20 catches for 144 yards as well. Now, this should be Kenneth Walker wheels up, right? Well, he's a free agent. So I don't know if Seattle brings him back. It's not like Seattle has a whole lot in the cupboard. They drafted, I want to say Damian Martinez, who they had released. He's now on the Packers practice squad. They have something called a George Holani on this team, but not much besides that. And I wonder if this opens the door for Kenneth Walker. Now, even if it does, Frank, I do believe that Seattle is going to find somebody. J.K. Dobbins, Najee Harris, one of these guys where they just signed him for a year to go with Kenneth Walker. So while it seems like we're going to get 3-down Walker in 2026, I don't believe Seattle wants that. I don't think Seattle's going to let that happen. Even if Charbonnet is not there, I still think it's a split backfield with Walker in this upcoming season.
Yeah, I think what this does most is probably makes it much more likely that the Seahawks re-sign Walker, whereas if it was still Charbonnet healthy and they were doing their committee thing, maybe there's a chance Walker would move on. I think Walker probably is going to look good in more of a bell cow role in the remaining playoff games for the Seahawks. And maybe that'll give them a little more confidence to give Walker a little more work next year. But Charbonnet will be back and probably taking away some of the work. So we got to consider that. And it was a really frustrating situation in that Seahawks backfield. So let's say Walker, who just had a good game, has another big game against the Rams. Maybe the Seahawks win the Super Bowl and Walker goes off, gets steamed up next year. I guess we got to tread a little lightly just because of what we've seen in the past with them.
Yeah, and you bring that up too. And I don't want to make it seem like it's a foregone conclusion that Walker comes back to Seattle, but this does make it more likely that he does, as you just pointed out. But there is a non-zero chance that he doesn't come back at all. And Seattle has a completely different backfield in 2026. So I think regardless, if Walker doesn't come back to Seattle, if he does come back to Seattle, I would imagine he's the 1A in that committee. If he doesn't come back to be a member of the Seahawks, he's probably getting a contract elsewhere that's going to put him at a minimum as a 1A. So you can draft him as a 1A right now. In fact, in the Never-Too-Early Best Ball tournament, he's got an ADP of running back 17 at the 401. Trevion Henderson, RJ Harvey, Kyron Williams, all going right around that same spot as Kenneth Walker. Okay, let's finish up this segment with talk about Bo Nix. His ankle surgery went well, according to Sean Payton. This is Nick Kosmider, who posted this on X. Broke his ankle on the second to last play of regulation in the divisional round against the Bills, and now he's rehabbing. Jarrett Stidham is going to take over the Broncos for however long their postseason lasts. Frank, did I see this right? He broke it on a kneel down, Nix did?
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. That's just awful. I mean, you win the conference championship, even though I thought they should have lost the Broncos, and I was, got some heat from their fans because I was chirping them, but
I think you're that on. I feel like there's a lot like as many bullets fly at you on X. I think you're firing many more.
Yeah. So. I deserve it a lot of the time, but yeah, that sucks. Like, you're celebrating the win, and then you find out right after the game that he's out for the season. I mean, oh man, what a buzzkill! But good fit in Sean Payton's offense. Not someone I'm going to be, banging the door down to get in fantasy. He's someone that you would take off a down year, and then maybe he's priced lower, and then better in best ball when you want like a couple quarterbacks, and then you get their best score. I don't want to have to. Like, he's more of a matchup play in your conventional 1 QB leagues, in my opinion, Bo Nix.
We don't have the full ADP because we don't have any. The Never-Too-Early tournaments that are going on right now are all slow drafts. So we don't have the full ADP data on that. I can tell you that 14 quarterbacks have been drafted so far. None of them has been Bo Nix. So people are not drafting him. And that makes sense that he would not be drafted as a number one quarterback going forward here. But we'll see what happens next year. No concern about this ankle surgery lasting into the regular season and affecting his play for you, right, Frank?
I mean, I haven't read too much into the injury. It just feels like for me it was serious enough to miss like a month. Like, it doesn't feel like it would have been a season-ending one if it was like week 4. But to be fair, I haven't fully looked into the injury. If it was like, I just assumed like because he'll be back next year. I didn't, but.
Yeah, and I don't think Denver's revealed much about the injury.
Yeah.
I mean, like, they're just focused like, look, we have 2 games left this season potentially. He's not playing in either one of them. We'll give you an update, when OTA is coming around. So as it stands right now, I am of the belief I am not drafting him as if this ankle is going to impact him at all in 2026, but I reserve the right to change my mind. I will not change my mind on telling you how awesome the FFPC Dynasty and Empire Orphans are out there. We've done several Dynasty drops already with people picking up these orphans, some good deals on them. They start at $77, go all the way up to $5,000, but many are discounted right now. You can get some pretty good deals. I think there's some that are less than $10, so pick those up at myffpc.com. While you're there, I've been citing the ADP data on the Never-Too-Early Best Ball tournament. Certainly we have that going on, as well as the Superflex Best Ball tournament, Never-Too-Early style. $125 entry for $40,000 grand prize that's what it gets you eligible for in the NTE Classic. In the Superflex Best Ball tournament, $35 entry gets you eligible for a $10,000 grand prize. And we got the Gorillas going as well. Big Gorilla, $1 million grand prize, $350 entry fee. Check out the 7 Bananas and the Early Rampage promos, which are back this year. And then we were introducing the Baby Gorilla this year, $125 to get into that one, and can still win $100,000. Where else can you do that? I don't know, probably a couple places, but we have the Gorillas. It is the FFPC exclusive, myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Maybe you can't get it anywhere else. I don't know. We have not talked a whole lot about the coaching carousel. I want to do that with you, Frank. Frank Ammirante from RotoBaller Fantasy Pros and a cavalcade of other fantasy outlets writing for those publications. He is going to weigh in on the Falcons offensive coordinator. We'll talk about the Buccaneers hiring a new offensive coordinator. And we have to talk about the Raiders having the number 1 pick, and yet they don't have a head coach or an OC yet. That and so much more. Frank Ammirante, Eric Balkman here on FFPC Insider Access on the Better Sports Network. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this. And we have one Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon declaring for the NFL draft. This dude is probably going to be a first-round pick. Certainly the best tight end in this draft, if not the best, one of the best. He's only 20 years old. He was 2 years ago as a sophomore, 24 catches, 300 plus yards, 2 touchdowns on the champions of the Big Ten. That was Oregon 2 years ago. Last year, he tops 50 catches, 500 yards, 8 touchdowns, and that was tops among all tight ends in college this past year. I think that, especially with tight end premium scoring with the FFPC, when it comes to rookie drafts, and we'll see where this guy ends up, opportunity situation is going to affect his status in rookie drafts. But before that, when we have these redraft leagues, Pat, Kenyon Sadiq is a very, very interesting guy. If you wait on tight end to grab him as your second tight end this year, I'm not saying he's Harold Fanta Jr. because he's not, but he could have a similar, if not as impactful impact on your fantasy squads this season. Dude catches a lot of passes. He's very athletic, and certainly in the right situation, he can flourish, and you won't have to draft him. At least I don't think you'll have to draft him as one of the top 12 tight ends.
Absolute freak athlete. People are going to be really excited about him after the combine because he is going to go in and he's going to run a 4.5 or maybe a sub 4.5 if he does some speed training. I think he already has a 41.5-inch vertical jump on the books. Like good hands, good body control. And as you said, I mean, he doesn't turn 21 until March. I can't remember if it's before or after the draft or he turns 21, but like, yeah, there's a lot to like here. Plus he's 245 pounds with room to add weight and apparently very dedicated to improving as a blocker. So it looks like he's going to be a 3-down tight end.
We are back here on FFPC Insider Access here on the Better Sports Network. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Eric Balkman. He is Frank Ammirante from FantasyPros and RotoBaller. And my God, did we have a lot going on with the coaching carousel this week. We have to get into it. Frank, I know you have a take on this. The Falcons not only got Kevin Stefanski as their new head coach after they fired Raheem Morris, but they've also signed Stefanski's OC from Cleveland, Tommy Rees, to be the offensive coordinator in Atlanta. Maybe good for one player on the Falcons, maybe not good for some others. Your take on how the new coaches and the new OCs in Atlanta are going to affect the likes of Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts, if Kyle Pitts returns to Atlanta.
Yeah, so first of all, I do like the hire of Kevin Stefanski. I think he's a good coach. I mean, you don't win Coach of the Year twice by accident. He's a good coach. I like the fact that Stefanski coached Kirk Cousins back in Minnesota as the Vikings OC for a couple seasons, so there's familiarity there. And Michael Penix, coming off the ACL, maybe they start the season with Cousins and see how it goes and give Penix some time rather than throwing him back into the fire. And if that's the case, I think they're going to be run heavy. And, Tyler Algier is a UFA. He may sign elsewhere for more opportunity. You may see one of those 400-plus type touch seasons from Bijan Robinson, and he could just go completely nuclear. I know he had a great year this year. A lot of people on Twitter, when I say that, are like, dude, Bijan just went off this year. Yeah, he had a good year, but he didn't have that completely massive fantasy season that he's capable of because, Algier took away a few touchdowns. Like, Bijan wasn't even overall RB1 in points per game. So I think with this hire, it's really cements Bijan as the first overall pick in my eyes. But I was high on Drake London. I still love him as a player, and we saw the high ceiling. But I think given the hires at coach and OC, you're going to see more run heavy, and he may be maybe that London nuclear type of season maybe isn't in 2026 just because, if Cousins is starting, they're not going to be this pass heavy offense. Like, he's getting older, really feature Bijan. I think their defense has really improved. So they could be that kind of team. So for me, it's a slight downgrade on Drake London because I thought maybe Clint Kubiak would go there. And you saw what JSN did with Kubiak. But it's an upgrade on Bijan and a good hire overall for the team, the Falcons.
You talk about this is what I wanted to ask you. You talk about Robinson being cemented in as the 101. Is this going to be the first time in 2 or 3 years that we have sort of a consensus 101 in fantasy football? We didn't have one the last couple of years, and now we might have one with Robinson.
Actually, see, that's a good question because I did say cemented. I mean, like from me, because so I'm a huge Bijan fan, and I just think that we haven't got that really massive season from him yet, and I know it's in him. So I want to be on him when that happens. So for me, I'll be taking him 101. But I could easily see others going with, Puka Nacua had a huge year. They like to construct their roster with a receiver first, maybe 2 receivers, first 2 rounds, especially in these large field tournaments. So I don't think it will be like everyone's taking Bijan at 1, but I mean, it's probably going to be between Bijan and Puka, probably.
I'm looking at the Never-Too-Early data right now. The only 2 players that have gone 101 in any of these drafts so far has been Bijan Robinson and Jamar Chase, actually.
Yeah, I could see that too.
Yeah. Nakua, the highest he's gone so far is 103. And then the other guy who went at 102 in 2 drafts was Jahmyr Gibbs. So that's the other player that we can, and we'll get into Petzing and everything like that shortly. I think we will. Did I? Yeah, I put that on there. Oh God, wanted to make sure we talk about that tonight. Mike McDaniel is somebody we should talk about here. We touched on it in the first segment, but Schefter is reporting that the former head coach for Miami is going to be the head offensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Chargers under Jim Harbaugh. God, imagine the conversations between those two that are going to take place. Wow. Can we get Hard Knocks in Los Angeles to cover Mike McDaniel and Jim Harbaugh? I think that'd be tremendous. So specifically, I think most people on X, most fantasy players, they're very excited about this for the Chargers. Do you think this benefits one player rather than the others, or maybe a group of players? You think about Omari and Hampton, obviously QJ, Ladd McConkey, Trey Harris. We talked about Rondé Gadsden. I mean, I think a rising tide, in this case, Mike McDaniel, raises all ships. But is it maybe going to raise one of those ships a little higher than the others? Is there anybody with Los Angeles that you're specifically excited about with Mike McDaniel calling the shots?
See, this one is tough because, like you said, it's the rising tide lifts all boats. I think the hire is going to help the whole offense. It's hard to nail down which player. But in thinking about how the market's going to react to this, I like Omari and Hampton. He's probably going to go, though, really high, early second round. So you got to be willing to take that risk. Like, I know McDaniel's great at, creating a running game, but we haven't seen it yet. Like, what if he gives Kamani Vidal a little bit of touches? But in short, I still will be fine with Omari and Hampton at that price just because he's a talented running back with a great coach. But we still have to point out some risks that are involved. Looking at the receivers, probably – I don't know. Keenan Allen, do we really think he's going to be back? He's looking like he's on his last legs. I think if Keenan Allen maybe gets cut or is not brought back, and with the fact that Ladd McConkey had such a disappointing year, left a sour taste in everyone's mouth, kind of Keenan Allen's skill set made it. At first, we're like, oh, Keenan Allen's not going to affect Ladd McConkey, but he did, clearly, because he just was another, underneath target that Herbert looked at. If Allen is gone with McDaniel there, that's 2 positives in Ladd McConkey's favor. Add in the fact that maybe he won't get bumped up too much because he had such a disappointing year, whereas Hampton's going to get, steamed quite a bit. Maybe McConkey's the one that I'm going to go with just because of price.
I'm actually surprised as I looked at the ADP. Hampton's not going until the mid-second, which, I mean, I don't know. I guess I kind of thought he'd be more of like a 1-2 turn type guy, but he's mid-second, right by Jeremiah Love, right behind James Cook. I don't think Allen's coming back. At least that's what my gut's telling me right now. The guy I think that, not that I'm most excited for, but the guy I think that could make the biggest step forward on this Chargers offense is actually Harris. Because he was kind of kept off the field after that Keenan Allen signing. And it took him a while to kind of acclimate. He came on to, I don't say at the end of the year, but sort of like the third quarter of the year, you saw him come on a little bit more. And McConkey, let's face it, McConkey doesn't have as far to jump as Harris does. Same thing with Hampton. So Harris is the guy, and not that I'd be targeting him as like a wide receiver 3 or anything like that, but I think he's an exciting guy to watch out for next year as well. Schefter also reporting that Tampa Bay is finalizing a deal to hire former Falcons offensive coordinator Zach Robinson for the same position with the Buccaneers. Robinson was a member of the Falcons 2 years ago when Raheem Morris was hired as the head coach. He is part of the McVay tree. He actually worked for Sean McVay for 5 years, getting all the way up to pass game coordinator for the final 2 campaigns. He got Atlanta to 13th in points scored, despite Kirk Cousins being less than spectacular in his first year in Atlanta. And then the team switched to Michael Penix this year, and it was bad. They fell to 24th in scoring. This is Baker Mayfield's, God, it seems like he gets a new offensive coordinator every single year. I thought that this was, I'm more excited about him in Tampa, Robinson I'm speaking of, than Grizzard. But certainly you think about what Canales did there, what Liam Cohen did there. I don't know if Robinson is going to be as good as those two, but maybe he doesn't have to be. Maybe if he's just better than Grizzard, you could look at this Tampa offense starting to fire on all cylinders again, Frank.
Yeah, I think the biggest key here with the Robinson hire, which on the surface, doesn't really excite you the way that a McDaniel hire with the Chargers does. But what's key is that Robinson worked with Baker Mayfield when Baker Mayfield was briefly with the Rams, because Robinson was on that staff. So getting that familiarity with Baker is probably big to get him back on track, because he probably, likely due to injury, really fell off in the second half. Baker Mayfield did. But just getting a coach that is familiar with the scheme is big. I think that will be helpful. Who knows? Maybe Zach Robinson's the type that likes to have, a 1-2 punch in the backfield, and that's why they continued using Algier with Bijan Robinson. To that end, Rachaad White's going to leave as a free agent. He was very transparent about that on Twitter. If you've seen, he's posted pictures with Jaden Daniels when they were in college. So to that point, Sean Tucker might be, get a boost in value as that handcuff to Bucky Irving with maybe some standalone value, getting some touchdowns. We saw him as the red zone back down the stretch, Sean Tucker. So interesting with Robinson there.
I don't know if, I guess, maybe the secondary is probably the biggest hole I can think of on Tampa, but God, they got a cavalcade of wide receivers. They could probably use another tight end besides Otten, but I think their offensive line's pretty good. I don't know. Could be a luxury pick. Maybe they go with a running back there with Rachaad White expected to move on, and
True.
We'll see what happens there. But yeah, certainly Sean Tucker. I think they like him, and why wouldn't they? We got a question in the chat, Mr. Bakes a lot, and I'm sorry, I for whatever reason I've kind of been ignoring the chat tonight. Guys, keep posting your questions and your comments in there. We'll throw them up on the screen and talk about them. But Mr. Bakes a lot wants to know if we have any thoughts on Jonathan Brooks. Now, if you remember, Jonathan Brooks, I can't believe we're talking about him. Still, I actually forgot he was in the league. Back in May of last year, he was placed on injured reserve. To bring it all back, 21 years old. He fell to the second round of the draft in 2024 because he tore his ACL the previous year. Then he debuts in week 10, re-tears the ACL, and misses the entire 2025 season. Carolina already re-signed Chuba Hubbard to a 4-year deal in November of 2024, and then they got Rico Dowdle on a 1-year deal. I would expect Rico Dowdle to move on. They also drafted Trevor Etienne in the 4th round, which, because of how rich the running backs were in the 2025 draft, that's more of like a day 2 pick rather than a day 3 pick. I don't know what the Panthers think about Brooks at this point, given their investment into Dowdle, who was signed prior to the Brooks tear, the Brooks ACL tear. No, it was signed after. Sorry. They won't have Dowdle, but they will have Etienne. They will have Hubbard. I late round, sure. Throw a dart at him, but I don't really expect anything from Brooks. Maybe I'm just selling him short, Frank.
The thing is, though, that Brooks was pretty highly touted. A lot of respected draft minds like Jonathan Brooks, and a lot of fantasy football players, even though he was missing part of the season in 2024, were all over Brooks. And remember, he went like pretty high in the draft for the fact that he was missing time.
Second round.
He was going like fantasy drafts in 20.
Oh, right.
He was going like 7th or something, which was high considering he missed time. Just speaking to like how highly touted he was. And now you think of like last season, look at Javonte Williams. When he came out of the draft, he was pretty highly touted. He looked good as a rookie. Then he wasn't good for 3 seasons because of the injury. Then he looked good again in the right situation. My point is, I don't want to underestimate a running back who at one point was really highly touted if the situation is right. And we've seen this Panthers running game, the team context with Dave Canales. It looked like Hubbard had his moments, Dowdle had his moments. I think Brooks can too. So as long as the steam doesn't get too out of hand on him, everyone gets excited about young players, I'm going to be interested. Where does he go? I mean, probably doesn't show yet. He hasn't
not showing up yet. But I can tell you this, Frank, interesting that you asked me this, because I did go back and I went, because Fantasy Mojo has the historical FFPC data. In 2024 drafts, when they ended, he was going off as running back 31 at the end of the 8th round, knowing that he was going to miss time.
Exactly.
And so I think that there is something to be said for this of his talent. I just question the level of his talent now with all these devastating injuries to his knee. We'll see. And hopefully I'm pleasantly surprised on that. So hopefully that helps you out, Bakes. Getting back to the coaching carousel here, we go to Nashville, where Bob Saleh is now the new head coach for Tennessee. This is his second go-around as a head man, as he was previously the head coach for the New York Jets. He is a great defensive mind, great defensive motivator. He has cut his teeth and really made a name for himself as a defensive coordinator, as a great defensive motivator, and not so much as a head coach. 357 career win percentage. He went 7-10 in 2022, 7-10 in 2023. This is a full rebuild for Tennessee as they unloaded some veterans at the trade deadline. We could see some cuts on this team. They're going to have a lot of money to spend. Can we glean anything into this right now, Frank, knowing that Saleh's the head coach? We don't know who the OC is yet. And I feel like given that Saleh is more of a defensive guy than an offensive guy, the OC is crucial on how we are drafting players like Shim DK, Chiga Okonkwo, Tony Pollard, Cam Ward, so on and so forth, right?
Yeah, the offensive coordinator hire is crucial. I mean, obviously, as fantasy guys, we want the team to hire an offensive-minded coach when they have a year 2 quarterback, former first overall pick. So we got to see who they hire. Really, it's going to be up in the air. Just a perfect example. Look at the Seahawks with Mike McDonald. How good it's worked out in year 2 when they've nailed the OC with Clint Kubiak, whereas year 1, Ryan Grubb was underwhelming. So it's very crucial that the Titans nail this, and we'll have to see. But I'm going to say, even if they do get an intriguing hire, I don't know. I still think there's a lot of work to be done. Maybe they take a receiver with their first round pick, and then it'll be interesting.
Yeah, very. And that's what they need. I mean, I think who was talking about this the other day? I think it was Cody Carpentier, I think, from Roster Watch, was saying that, they already have the number 2 receiver. They already have the number 3 receiver, but they need a bona fide number 1 receiver on this team. And that'll go a long way to helping Cam Ward out too, where he can lean on that guy on third downs or when he needs a play to be made to get that guy on the perimeter. I think they'd be very, very compelling. I meant to lead off the segment with this because it happened about 2 hours before we went on air. But we'll bring it up right now. Ian Rappaport reporting that the Baltimore Ravens have a new head coach, and the guy who is becoming the 4th head coach in Ravens history after Ted Marchibroda, Brian Billick, and now John Harbaugh is indeed the 42-year-old former defensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Chargers, Jesse Minter. He not only was the DC for Jim Harbaugh the last 2 years, but he was the DC for Harbaugh at Michigan in college for 2 years as well. He was the DC and safeties coach at Vanderbilt. He's also worked with John Harbaugh when he was a defensive assistant for a couple of years, about 8 years or so ago. Promoted to assistant defensive backs coach and then defensive backs coach in 2019 and 2020. And according to Rappaport, Minter, we're kind of in the same situation with Saleh. Minter's a defensive guy. We got to figure out who the OC is going to be in Baltimore here. Rappaport mentioned Cliff Kingsbury, who was the OC most recently with the Washington Commanders, and the offensive coordinator for the Bills last year, Joe Brady. But just on the surface, Frank, and feel free to disagree with me, Minter's this hard-nosed guy, defensive guy, worked under Jim Harbaugh. To me, this is a guy who wants to reinvigorate the defense, bring the the Baltimore defense back to when it was one of the most feared units in the NFL, right? That's what he wants to do. And when you want to do that, it usually comes with a strong ground game as well. Obviously, Derrick Henry didn't really show signs of falling off last year. Maybe he does this year. But I feel like Baltimore is going to want to run the ball quite a bit, knowing that that they've soaked a lot of first-round draft capital into wide receivers. I don't know if they keep doing that. I think it's Flowers and I think it's Bateman. They have Tez Walker on that team as well. I think this hire means that they're going to be running the ball, a very smash-mouth type offense, and maybe this is what keeps Derrick Henry live and productive for yet another year as he is in his 30s.
Yeah, it really seems like the Ravens want to get back to their roots of playing their great defense. That defense took a big drop off ever since really Mike McDonald left. So they're getting back to that. And I agree with you. Smash mouth football. Good for Derrick Henry. Zay Flowers was always boomer bust, but this past season, his final finish in points per game, I think he was top 15 receiver. I don't think that's going to happen again with this hire because I do think the defense will be a lot better and they won't be forced to, air it out as much. And hey, Lamar Jackson was probably playing hurt and that's why there was that decline, but we have to bake in a slight risk that what if there's a slight drop off? You never know. But to that end, I'm not really going to be interested in Zay Flowers. Derrick Henry, if he's going in the third round, I'll maybe take a shot. From a team standpoint, I think this Jesse Minter hire is good. In Michigan, his defense was good. With the Chargers, his defense was good. Young coach. I think there's a lot of potential here. But Derrick Henry still have hope. Zay Flowers is going to be risky, especially coming off a finish that he did. He might go like fourth round now, I would say.
Yeah. Derrick Henry, I'm looking at it right now in the Never-Too-Early tournament. I can tell you that FFPC players are drafting him at running back 15 at the 312. So right around that 3-4 turn is where Henry's going, right behind Jacobs, Bucky Irving, and Breece Hall, right ahead of Trevion Walker, Kenneth Walker, and RJ Harvey. The Raiders, let's talk about them here because it's wild. They have locked up the number one pick. We know they're going to be drafting number one. They have a GM. They have a Hall of Famer in Tom Brady. What they don't have is a head coach, and what they don't have is an offensive coordinator. And according to Jordan Schultz from Fox Sports, the Raiders are believed to be focusing on an offensive-minded head coach to pair with, again, Fernando Mendoza, who we expect to be the number one overall pick. Clint Kubiak, who is the OC for Seattle. The passing game coordinator and quarterback coach for Denver, Davis Webb, have been names that have come up a lot as top candidates. Maybe it's not a surprise that the Raiders have not hired anybody, given that these guys are both still coaching in the NFL postseason right now. Jesse Minter did get a second interview there. He obviously went with Baltimore instead. And the other thing too, and Schultz pointed this out, Tom Brady's been on the call for a lot of Seattle games towards the end of the season and the postseason. So he's getting a pretty good look at Clint Kubiak here if they do indeed decide to go that way. I think regardless of who they hire, it's going to be an offensive guy, which has to get you excited. Obviously for Mendoza, he's going to be the number one overall pick, but a nice little buying opportunity to buy the dip off Ashton Genty, and for sure buying the dip off Brock Bowers, although there's not much of a dip right now. We're still seeing him going at the 111 in the Never-Too-Early Best Ball tournament. But this Raiders offense, certainly they have a lot of improvements to make on the offensive line, but they have some pieces there. You add one more perimeter receiver with Mendoza. Raiders offense looking pretty good in 2026.
Yeah, I love the fact that they're going to bring in an offensive-minded head coach. You got to think after what we saw with their offensive line, that's going to be a major priority. And even just if Mendoza's good, he'll just help pass protection like that a little bit, just with pocket presence. Good quarterbacks can help out pass protection. But I think the disastrous season that the Raiders did, they got to make sure that pass protection and that offensive play calling is much improved. I think they will do it. And really speaks to how sharp the draft market has gotten, that there's barely any discount on Brock Bowers after a disappointing season. Maybe we'll get more of a discount in other formats, but yeah, I'll be all over Brock Bowers. I think I think that, I love what Trey McBride did, but a lot of it was just Jacoby Brissett in those games where they're getting blown out and passing every down, playing this ugly, like this not winning football where you're just throwing it every down and just spamming targets to McBride. McBride's amazing, but I still think Brock Bowers is better, and I'll be targeting Bowers more than McBride. McBride goes a little higher.
Yeah, I mean, on the surface, I don't want to pay the premium for McBride, and I'll buy the discount on Bowers. It's wild that they're so close together. In fact, it almost seemed like, if I remember, I'd have to look up data from last year. It almost seemed like it was Bowers going in the mid first and McBride going at the end of the first last year. And now it's McBride in the mid first and Bowers at the end of the first. Ashton Genty, by the way, not much of a discount on him. 203 is where he's right now. Running back 6.
Too sharp. We've gotten too good. Everyone's gotten too good.
It's all because we have access to the same information. Yeah. Everybody's reading what Frank Ammirante is writing about these guys, and you're single-handedly bringing up the ADP of all these Raiders. So there you go. The Drew Petzing thing, I want to get into that now before we go further, because this one caught me off guard. Tom Pelissero reported earlier this week that the Lions have decided on a new OC, and his name is Drew Petzing, the former offensive coordinator for the Arizona Cardinals. I don't need to tell you about the disappointment that I think a lot of people had with what he was able or not able to do in Arizona. I do think if we look past 2025, he was pretty good with getting the ground game going with James Conner in previous years. But I'm surprised that Petzing moves on from Arizona to get one of the most coveted OC jobs in the NFL. The other aspect too is he going to be calling plays? I don't know. I don't know if anything's been announced with this, but Dan Campbell took over from John Morton halfway through the season last year because he wasn't satisfied with a lot of things, but definitely was not satisfied with the lack of action that Jameson Williams is getting in the passing game. Then we see Williams come up with a 1,000-yard receiving season after he had a strong end to the 2025 campaign. Petzing in Detroit. I remain hopeful. I remain optimistic. But if this doesn't work out, Frank, it would not shock me.
Yeah, like you said, it wasn't like Petzing was that impressive with Arizona and he got an upgraded job. But
yeah,
I completely agree with you that what he does well, Petzing, is help with the running game, and that was a major issue for the Lions down the stretch. It was a big contributor to their collapse. So I think they'll get the running game back on track. So that was their point of emphasis here. But there is risk, like maybe they use David Montgomery a little more than they did this past season. Doesn't mean Jahmyr Gibbs won't be the focal point. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying maybe Monty gets more involved as he was in 2024 compared to this past year, which is a little throws a little wrinkle in Jahmyr Gibbs if you wanted to take him at 101. What I didn't like with Petzing is how he used Marvin Harrison Jr. Like it was always like isolated on the perimeter. Wasn't really creative to get him looks. Now Michael Wilson looked great with Petzing, so maybe it's a Marvin Harrison Jr. thing. I don't really think it is, but we'll have to see. But to that end, it makes me a little concerned about like Jameson Williams if Petzing is calling plays and then they're more run heavy. He may be too boomer bust unless we get somewhat of a discount, but I don't know. People love his spike week potential. Jameson Williams always feels like he's priced up every year.
I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but there's definitely a non-zero chance of it. Detroit has had probably, I don't want to say definitely one of the most battered defenses in the NFL as far as injuries go. It happened in 2024 to a massive degree, and then that happened to a significant degree in 2025. I'm just wondering if those injuries regress to the mean a little bit, where there's not as many of them, and Detroit's in less shootouts as a result. Where they can afford to run Gibbs more, and then Montgomery more, or whoever Montgomery's replacement would be if they decide to not bring him back. And we already know, you mentioned it too, with Petzing's penchant for running the football. I wonder if we're going to be a little bit disappointed with those Detroit wide receivers and the return of Sam Laporta this year too. So I don't know. It's something to monitor, something to consider. Again, I don't know if it happens, but I definitely could see it happening. I could tell myself a story that happens. Here's another concerning thing that I noticed. Pro Football Talk reported this yesterday. Jon-Eric Sullivan, who was in the front office for the Packers for the last couple of decades. He's now the GM for Miami. And he said he wants to build a team that can win in cold weather. You think about their division: Buffalo, New York, New England. These are all teams they've struggled against on the road late in the season because of the way that the Dolphins were put together. Jeff Hafley says he wants to go away from the team's previous emphasis on speed in exchange for physicality and size. Jeff Hafley, Jon-Eric Sullivan said this: our division runs through Buffalo, New England, and New York. Cold weather places. There's a saying in our business: fast gets slow, but big doesn't get small. We're not going to sacrifice speed and explosion and skill for a bunch of big, stiff guys, but we're going to have substance to us at all levels of our team: at corner, at receiver, at running back, and certainly up front. It starts with the quarterback, and then we'll build this team from the inside out. We've got to be dominant on the offensive line, dominant on the defensive line, end quote. My concern with this is a long way of saying it. Devon Achane is a player who was drafted specifically for speed. Mike McDaniel utilized him not as if he was 5'10", 195, but as if he was 6'10", 220, or 6'10", 6'1", 220. Like he utilized him in a lot of situations where you would not put a running back of his size in, and he flourished. I'm also concerned that if they are prioritizing size rather than speed, is there going to be more of an emphasis on a bigger running back, whether that's Ollie Gordon or whether they bring in somebody else that is going to take away from Achane, maybe not in September, maybe not in October, but in November and December when we need fantasy victories, when the cash is doled out. Devon Achane right now in the FFPC Never-Too-Early tournament is running back 5 at the 112. Normally, I would not have a problem with this. I see this, and I'm like, I don't want to read too much into what their GM is saying, but it does give me pause. Your thoughts on this new focus on size and physicality with Miami at the expense of speed, Frank?
Yeah, what if they want to mimic what the Patriots do in their backfield, their division rival, bringing in a big, like Ramondre Stevenson gets a lot of work from Trevion Henderson. Henderson's a speedy running back just like Achane is. What if the new regime sees that and wants to try to replicate that with Miami and what they're saying here, or how they want to win in cold weather, be a more smash mouth team? Yeah, totally agree with your point there. It's a little bit concerning for Achane. Achane's a stud, but you know, he had a great play caller in McDaniel. That optimizes his usage. That makes him way better in fantasy. Now, I mean, are we that confident that they're going to have such an innovative type of offensive scheme? They're probably just going to be that smash mouth team, like you said. Mm-hmm. And it's concerning. You're paying a premium for Achane because he's coming off a big year. In non-tight end premium, he's going to go higher than 112 because you won't have 2 tight ends in the first round. Right. So that's another thing to add on to the listeners. So, yeah, it's a little concerning. But to another point with Miami, maybe going with this run-heavy offense, former Packers DC as new head coach, maybe they bring in Malik Willis as their new quarterback, go super run heavy. What better way to go super run heavy than have a dual threat quarterback? And that's bad for Jalen Waddle. We talked about Achane just now, but like, this is probably going to be a low passing volume offense, and it's not looking good for Waddle's prospects for 2026.
Do you believe Tyreek Hill moves on? They let him go, right?
I think he's going to move on. Yeah, I think Tyreek Hill moves on and maybe catches on back with the Chiefs, or we'll see what happens. We'll see how he even looks after that injury.
Yeah, that's another good point too. Another guy who's on the wrong side of 30 as well. NBC WGRZ's Vic Carucci reported that the firing of Buffalo Bills head coach Sean McDermott is, quote, being met with skepticism by players who held McDermott in high regard. Now, end quote, by the way. Now, that's not at all surprising. Obviously, if the players hold this guy in high regard, they're going to be upset and they're going to be disappointed, and they're going to call out the fact that that this guy should not have been fired. And I think there's a lot of people that believe that perhaps the wrong guy was fired in this case, as Brandon Beane not only kept his job, but he gets a promotion. And one of the most shocking press conferences I've ever seen in the NFL, at least in recent memory, with Terry Pegula, the owner, kind of piling on Keon Coleman, a guy who's still on their roster, which is really bizarre. And then there's kind of a little bit of a back and forth with the press and Brandon Beane's reaction to being called out for perhaps a power move. This is basically, I mean, reportedly there was a power struggle going on between McDermott and between Brandon Beane. There was a meeting 5 weeks ago. So this is when they were, still in the regular season. And Sean McDermott was there, Brandon Beane was there, and Terry Pegula was there. And the coach pointed out what the roster lacked in order to win a Super Bowl. And apparently, obviously, that's not going to sit right with Brandon Beane. And it obviously did not sit right with Terry Pegula as well. They did not care for what McDermott had to say about this roster. Brandon Beane is now the president of football operations. He is going to have the opportunity to, and there's an added pressure on him now because he doesn't have McDermott to blame anymore if he comes up short. This is a weak wide receiver free agent class. It's not exactly the greatest wide receiver class as far as rookies go. We'll see if a guy like Makai, even Lemon is not a great fit for their offense. I can't see Jordan Tyson slipping to where the Bills are going to be picking. So this could be another year of Josh Allen throwing to a bunch of nobodies, kind of, Khalil Shakir and a bunch of other lesser slot receivers, Dalton Kincaid when he's available. So you look at this situation right now in Buffalo, and quite frankly, Frank, we were putting together lineups for the FFPC playoff challenge, and it always came back to this, like it's Josh Allen or James Cook, maybe Dalton Kincaid as a pivot, since you can only roster one player per team in those challenges. I think that's the way I'm drafting these guys next year. Yeah, it's Josh Allen at quarterback. Yeah, it's James Cook at running back. After that, man, I really don't have any interest in any of these players. Maybe Dalton Kincaid as a backup tight end, maybe Khalil Shakir for depth, but this is a very unexciting group of playmakers on Buffalo outside of Allen and Cook.
Yeah, 100%. And with the way the players are upset with Sean McDermott's dismissal, maybe the hiring is going to be someone who either was there before, like Dable, that Josh Allen looked good with, or we talked about him earlier, Davis Webb, quote that he said publicly, "I love Buffalo. It's my favorite place I've ever played." He was a backup quarterback. For those who don't know, Davis Webb was there like a year. He didn't play, but he liked it there apparently. And he said, "My best friend is the starting quarterback over there." So Davis Webb is very close with Josh Allen. So what better way to cool the temperature on criticism with moving on from McDermott than bringing someone who works well with the quarterback? And the offense would look different in that situation. James Cook did his best work with Joe Brady. Maybe Joe Brady put together a nice running game there. So, Ray Davis is a good back. They could use him a little more. Makes me a little bit concerned of James Cook priced at a premium.
Yeah.
Early second, coming off his career year.
204, running back 7 right now.
Yeah, so that's one thing to add with that. I think it's either Davis Webb or Brian Dable as their next head coach. That's my prediction.
What am I missing? Why is Joe Brady not, is it just because he's not in contention because he worked for McDermott and that would be weird? I don't know why they wouldn't talk to him.
True. Yeah, he could be an option too, but I think maybe they want to just clean out that staff and bring in a totally new one.
Or maybe Brady's holding out for a head coaching gig too. That very well could be as well. Want to get to Philadelphia here. They Eagles fired offensive coordinator Kevin Patullo, and I think a lot of fantasy owners are happy with this. It seemed to be like sort of hey, I'm going to hire my good buddy at OC to replace Kellen Moore, and it didn't work out. And he probably should have been fired halfway through the season, but Nick Sirianni didn't do that. In fact, he technically hasn't fired Kevin Patullo. He's just reassigned him. He's still on the Eagles staff. He's just no longer the OC. But I'm intrigued to see what happens here because I think Barkley is coming down off a bad year. And quite frankly, I knew regression was coming anyway with all that, not necessarily for injury, but with all the big plays that he busted in 2024. I'm like, that's not going to continue in 2025. And it didn't. But now he's fallen a little bit. He is now going at the 2-3 turn as running back 11, which to me, if you get the right guy here, and they keep A.J. Brown. I think their Eagles are a better offense with A.J. Brown there. So I'd like to see what happens with another year of these same four, guys with Hurts, Smith, Brown, Barkley, five guys, and then Goddard. I'd like to see what they can do with apologies to Kevin Patullo, a more competent, seasoned, experienced offensive coordinator that could really turn this, kind of middling appetizer into a gigantic feast with Philly. I remain bullish on these Eagles players.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the Saquon Barkley example we could use with Christian McCaffrey coming into this year. If you would have said to someone heading into the drafts this coming season, Barkley's going to regress, I don't want him at all, they might be like, oh, come on, look at that offensive line. Look how good he did last year. But it just goes to show how different it could look year to year. And I think now we have a buying opportunity on Saquon Barkley with an offensive coordinator upgrade, the much reduced price, like you said, 2-3 turn, and applying that to CMC's wrist. Just because he got loaded with catches this year and didn't get hurt doesn't mean like we gotta just, I have to take CMC. Look at all that passing game usage. Things change so much year to year, and we got to use that Barkley example to help us out. But we got to see who the Eagles hire. I mean, anyone is going to probably be an upgrade. It's such a stacked supporting cast too, so it's not like they need this kind of amazing play caller that brings out more out of their offense. Like probably if it's just anyone decent, they'll look good again. So yeah, I'm with it, but mostly buying Barkley just because, A.J. Brown could be really frustrating to roster in fantasy football. Like you look at him, he has the total package, all the talent. So you always feel like even in his series of duds, like when he has those little, maybe 3 straight weeks not doing much, AJ Brown, you're like, oh, do I bench him? Oh, but he's AJ Brown. Like it's just really frustrating and 2 boom or bust. I'm really just going to be looking at Barkley.
I don't have the exact data in front of me. I have quasi data in front of me. 2024 Saquon Barkley regular season had 378 touches in the regular season. Now, if you move on, he played 3 more games. I believe, and don't quote me on this, I believe that took him to over 430 touches last year total. Okay. This year, 317 total touches. So Barkley is going to be coming off a season where he touched the ball more than 100 times fewer than he did in 2024. Another good reason, along with the price tag as far as ADP goes and everything, Frank, you just said, I think that I want to be in on Barkley at that 3 turn. In the same file where we're looking everything up that says things change so fast year to year, we are now living in 2026 where the Kansas City Chiefs are poaching the Chicago Bears coaching staff for players or for coaches to coach their players going forward. I kid a little bit because Eric Bieniemy, who was the running backs coach for Chicago, actually he did some of his best work in his coaching career as the OC in Kansas City. He was a member of the Chiefs coaching staff for 10 years, OC for 6 of those, 2018 through 2023, 2018 through 2022. So 5 of those years. They never finished worse than 6th in scoring, did Kansas City when Bieniemy was the OC. Some of that was Tyreek Hill in his prime on that team, certainly. I mean, good players make good plays. Last year, Matt Nagy was the offensive coordinator. His contract expired, and the Chiefs didn't renew it, and they're just interviewing other people, and then they hire Eric Bieniemy. It sounds like Matt Nagy could still get an offensive coordinator job somewhere. We just don't know where yet. The Chiefs had their worst offensive season last year in the Patrick Mahomes era, and you got to like what's coming back. I mean, we'll see what happens with Rashee Rice going on off the field. I don't know what's going on with Travis Kelce. I do think he has 1 more year left in him. I don't think it's going to be a great year, but I think it'd be passable as a borderline top 12 tight end. Certainly Xavier Worthy is another year with more experience. We'll see what else they add on the perimeter as far as pass catchers go. So you look at Eric Bieniemy coming back to be the OC in Kansas City. He wanted Patrick Mahomes, at least for the start of the season, or maybe he will, depending upon how fast he heals from his torn ACL. But the question here, Frank, is How much does the needle move for you as the Chiefs go from Matt Nagy back to Eric Bieniemy as offensive coordinator?
I think this move signals one key thing. You look at Eric Bieniemy, who's the RB coach with the Bears. The running game was good this year with the Bears. DeAndre Swift and Kalmananga looked good. What do the Chiefs clearly need? They desperately need a playmaker in that backfield. With Mahomes coming off a torn ACL, you want to help him out with a strong running game. Mm-hmm. And I think they're going to bring someone in. Go sign Breece Hall. He's a free agent. Get one of those free agent backs, Breece Hall or Etienne or Walker. I don't know if they're going to use their top 10 pick on a running back because that's a price tag. But there is Jeremiah Love. But I think they are going to invest in running back this year. And I think, especially with the Mahomes torn ACL, you got to think he'll be less mobile. You want to make it as easy as possible for him in a difficult circumstance. So I think bringing in a good running back is the best way to do so. And I think hiring Bieniemy, bringing him back after he was an RB coach, makes it show that they probably are going to do that move.
I will say I've seen a lot of mock drafts with the Chiefs being mocked to taking Jeremiah Love. Yeah. I still think, Frank, and maybe you think I'm off on this. I think we're at the point of mock draft season where everybody who's creating their mocks knows it's January and knows that these are going to change quite a bit. So they're kind of like, when they're pounding it up, they're kind of like, God, wouldn't it be awesome if Jeremiah Love went to Kansas? I'm just going to put Jeremiah Love in Kansas. Yeah. I think we're at that point of the season where it's fun to think about. I don't know if it necessarily happens, but man, I mean, he's already going to be the 101 in rookie drafts. If he goes to Kansas City, I can't even imagine what the price tag would be to trade the 101 in non-superflex leagues with the FFPC. And by the way, if you want to play in those leagues, go to myffpc.com. Plenty of Dynasty and Empire orphans right now from $77 all the way up to $5,000. We got a lot of discounted teams, price to move. So take your next step forward and play fantasy football 365 days a year with the FFPC by picking up a Dynasty orphan today. Never-Too-Early Best Ball and Never-Too-Early Superflex Best Ball tournaments live as well. The classic one, $125 entry fee, gets you eligible for a $40,000 grand prize. You can also play in the Superflex version for $35. That gets you eligible to win a $10,000 grand prize. And we launched Big Gorilla Slow Drafts this week as well. $1 million grand prize, $350 to get in. The 7 Bananas promo is live again this year. You're also entering the early Rampage tournament when you enter the Big Gorilla as well. So 2 tournaments for the price of 1 entry fee. And don't forget about the Baby Gorilla that we've introduced this year. $100,000 grand prize, and you can get in for just $125. All those tournaments and those Dynasty teams live at myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Speaking of those best ball tournaments, let's talk about some targets and fades in those tournaments right now with Frank Ammirante from FantasyPros and RotoBaller. We'll talk about Chris Olave. We'll get into Jeremiah Love as well. We also have to talk about Malik Nabers and how nervous we are about what he had to say when he wasn't doing an awesome, hilarious IHOP commercial. Frank Ammirante, Eric Balkman on FFPC Insider Access. The Better Sports Network rolls on right after this. And we have one Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon declaring for the NFL draft. This dude is probably going to be a first-round pick. Certainly the best tight end in this draft, if not the best, one of the best. He's only 20 years old. He was 2 years ago as a sophomore, 24 catches, 300-plus yards, 2 touchdowns, on the champions of the Big Ten. That was Oregon 2 years ago. Last year, he tops 50 catches, 500 yards, 8 touchdowns, and that was tops among all tight ends in college this past year. I think that, especially with tight end premium scoring with the FFPC, when it comes to rookie drafts, and we'll see where this guy ends up, opportunity situation is going to affect his status in rookie drafts. But before that, when we have these redraft leagues, Pat, Kenyon Sadiq is a very, very interesting guy. If you wait on tight end to grab him as your second tight end this year, I'm not saying he's Harold Fanta Jr. because he's not, but he could have a similar, if not as impactful impact on your fantasy squads this season. Dude catches a lot of passes. He's very athletic, and certainly in the right situation, he can flourish, and you won't have to draft him. At least I don't think you'll have to draft him as one of the top 12 tight ends.
Absolute freak athlete. People are going to be really excited about him after the combine because he is going to go in and he's going to run a 4.5 or maybe a sub 4.5 if he does some speed training. I think he already has a 41.5-inch vertical jump on the books. Like good hands, good body control. And as you said, I mean, he doesn't turn 21 until March. I can't remember if it's before or after the draft or he turns 21, but like, yeah, there's a lot to like here. Plus he's 245 pounds with room to add weight and apparently very dedicated to improving as a blocker. So it looks like he's going to be a 3-down tight end.
FFPC Insider Access rolling on here on the Better Sports Network. This is January 22nd, 2026. Joined by Frank Ammirante from FantasyPros, RotoBaller, and a host of other websites that he is doing fantasy work for. F Ammirante TFJ is the X moniker. TFJ, Frank, what is that part of it?
So when I first started creating content, I was going to try to do my own thing, like with a website, and it was going to be called the Fantasy Jones. So that was the acronym for it. Never really got rolling. Maybe we revisit it down the road, but that's the origin story.
You have to revisit it now because it's part of your X name. Like you have to do it.
I had it at the beginning. Never wanted to change it in case I ever went back to doing that. But
you can't change it now. This is part of your brand.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. We are talking about FFPC Never-Too-Early Best Ball Tournament and Superflex Best Ball Tournament targets and fades. Register now at myffpc.com. How high is too high for one Jeremiah Love, the guy I just talked about in the last segment, Frank? He's going to be the 101 pick in non-Superflex, maybe even Superflex rookie drafts as well. This is a player with first round. He's going to have first-round draft capital. At least we assume he's going to have first-round draft capital. Currently going in FFPC Never-Too-Early Best Ball drafts as the running back number 9 at the 207, right next to Amari and Hampton, just under James Cook, going ahead of Chase Brown and Saquon Barkley. I see a lot of things I like about Love. I feel like once these rookies have homes, their ADP goes up. I don't know how much the ADP can go more up for Jeremiah Love. I'm on board with him in the mid-second, but how high is too high for you?
I think if he creeps up to the end of the first round, that becomes too high for me. You know, as much as we love Genty as a prospect, look how the situation affected Genty. So, I mean, Love's going to have a better situation than that, but it's still a cautionary tale. And so I think the highest I'd pay for Love is early second round, just because rookie running back, you know, coaches do funky things early in the year. I know we play for the end of the year, especially in these large field tournaments like on FFPC, but we still have to, you know, advance. So it's something to consider.
The ADP from last season, I'm bringing it up right now. Chris Olave, once the season started, once drafting season was over, he was going off as wide receiver 37 at the 708. Questions about his concussions, question about his quarterback, question about the offense in general. Under a new head coach, new offense, there's a lot of moving pieces there. He seemed to pass all those tests with flying colors. And now, if we look at the Never-Too-Early tournament, his ADP, 708 in September, is now all the way up to wide receiver 11 at the 211. You're talking about 5 rounds this guy has shot up from the 7th round to the 2nd round. Are you on board with Chris Olave there? A lot of stuff has happened in New Orleans this past year. Most of it was good for Olave, but man, this is a premium price right behind Nico Collins and Rashee Rice, right ahead of George Pickens and A.J. Brown, Frank.
Now, for a lot of this episode, I've been talking about how I've been, you know, not wanting to pay a premium for a guy off a big year. But I'm going to go against that in this case because I love the situation for Chris Olave, and it's because Kellen Moore really puts him in a great position to succeed. He got Olave way more of those easier targets, whereas earlier in Olave's career, he was just more of a deep threat. This year, he was a target hog, getting those layup looks. You know, he finished as wide receiver 9 in points per game, it looks like, in half PPR. At the end of the year is when he did his best work, really starting to show an established rapport with Tyler Shuck. He had some big spike weeks in week 16 and 17, Olave did. So, we always loved him as a prospect. Now he's finally blossoming in the right coaching staff. I think he could even build on what he did last year, Olave, and maybe even do better. I'm totally on board.
And Chuck, I mean, it looks like this guy's a real one, right? Like he's going to stick around definitely for 2026. And I don't know, maybe they revisit this, like when you consider that how bad the quarterback class is this year for at least the rookie draft class. 2027 should be pretty loaded. So New Orleans is in the situation where they can get another free look at Chuck this year. And if he works out great, then they got their guy. If he doesn't work out, they can invest into another quarterback in 2027. Chuck can be the bridge, ultimately the backup. Maybe he moves on after that. He wasn't a first-round pick, so there is no fifth-year option for him as well. So that's another thing that is working in New Orleans' favor. One thing that, I don't know, maybe it's concerning, maybe it's actually a good thing. Rashid Shaheed moved on to Seattle. New Orleans traded him. They're in the business of getting a new receiver on this team to play opposite Chris Olave. I've seen Jordan Tyson mocked to the Saints quite a bit here. Ultimately, I think on the surface, this sounds like a bad thing because Olave can't get all the targets. But maybe, I mean, it should improve his efficiency. So maybe it's kind of like a net, right? Where he gets less targets, but more the targets become more efficient, more high value, and he still ends up crushing it regardless of if they draft a wide receiver high or not.
Yeah, I love that point you make about efficiency because Olave had 11.6 yards per reception. That was a career low last year. Previous ones, 12.5, 12.9. So with a full season with Chuck and with a better, running mate, if they draft one, it could help Olave's efficiency. I won't be too concerned if they bring in a rookie because I think Olave is cemented as that target hog there. We see it on other teams, receiving prospects we love, and they take a while to get going. Look at Luther Burden with Chicago. Yeah. So even if the Saints do draft one, I'm not too worried about that affecting Olave. I know it feels like a huge jump considering where Olave went last season in the draft, but I love the situation. And most importantly, I love the play caller because you when you have the play caller that's putting the player in a great position to succeed, the receiver in this case, you feel a lot more comfortable with the pick, and that's what I feel with Olave.
Yeah, Olave, too, is being drafted as a wide receiver one, which, I mean, even in his heyday, was he being drafted as a wide receiver one? Not that he's not in his heyday anymore, but like, this is like probably the highest he's ever been drafted. Yeah. I remain excited about Chris Olave this season for sure. This next point I want to bring up, Nick Caserio, the Titans GM, said that he thinks Tank Dell is going to be ready for the start of the offseason program. Now, he missed the entire season in 2025 because of that knee injury that he suffered blocking in the playoffs last year. This is not a Tank Dell question as much, Frank, as this is a Texans wide receiver question. If Dell does come back, and we don't know what kind of shape he's going to be, we don't know if he's going to be the same player, but at least they're going to give him a fair shake. What does this do to Jalen Noel? What does this do to Jaden Higgins? I don't think it really affects Nico Collins at all. But some of these, like, how does he affect these other wide receivers? What are you doing with those wide receivers, knowing that Dell is apparently going to be ready, not even for training camp, he's going to be ready for the offseason program?
It really muddles the situation, especially with like how they call plays, conservative ball control, run the football, and then you have the fact that Christian Kirk is even there too. So
right, yeah, that's another one.
Not even. I'm looking now. Oh wait, no, he could be a UFA. They could void the contract, so maybe we'll have to wait and see if that happens. I just took a look at Spotrac there, a good site for cap hits. But anyway, muddy situation. But you know what? Tank Dell is probably going to be very cheap in best ball if you want to take a dart throw. I don't hate that move, but I can't really see a big.
Do Higgins and Noel become dart throws then too?
I think it could. See, I like Noel. He showed some flashes. It's just he's not getting a lot of work. It's really a tricky situation that I'm probably going to avoid just because I'm not really bullish on Nick Caley as an OC to be creative and get these guys looks. I think they're
and Stroud is the quarterback too.
Yeah, and then Stroud's been struggling. Like we said earlier, Stroud needs that really innovated OC to get him back on track. I don't think Nick Caley's that guy, so I'm going to avoid.
Speaking of nebulous situations at Houston, Casario also said that they have not seen Joe Mixon, who had this foot injury that prevented him from playing this season. They want to get an exam on his foot before they can even determine if he can play in 2026. Casario did say, and he didn't go into details, but he said it was not a reckless thing that Mixon did. It was not like jumping off a building or jet skiing or, anything like that. It was a freak thing that happened. Eventually, maybe we'll find out what happened, but right now we don't know. We mentioned I think you mentioned at the top, and I if you said this, I agree with it. Woody Mark's probably not a bell cow running back, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. Nick Chubb, I would imagine, moves on. There's massive questions about Joe Mixon as well. He's not on my radar for drafting in 2026. And maybe it's fool's gold if Houston drafts another running back or adds another one in free agency where we get excited about them being the 1A or 1B in this backfield. But for all the reasons we just said, the OC, the quarterback, maybe it's fool's gold. Like, we think we're going to get this great production. Maybe there's not going to be great production in the backfield either.
Yeah, it's true. It was a really underwhelming offense this year, and they're going to keep the same OC. So that makes you, pessimistic. Mm-hmm. But, let's say Joe Mixon comes back in camp looking healthy, and they're going to keep him, and he's probably going to be real cheap. You could take a shot because he was pretty effective in fantasy in 2024. Like I said, feels like they really like to run the ball. I mean, they were giving Woody Marks, who's just miscast, like we said, as a bell cow. He's getting like 19 carries some games. So, I mean, if he's cheap enough, Mixon, I'd maybe take a dart throw. If they sign someone like Walker, I'd be a little interested. But I get your point that it's just hard to trust the way this offense is looked. C.J. Stroud, turnover machine, offensive line, been a turnstile, and OC is underwhelming. So it's tough with this Texans team. The price has got to be really good for me to be in.
I'm with you 100% on that. Now, Malik Nabers is being drafted as wide receiver 7 right now. He is going at the 204 in the Never-Too-Early Best Ball tournament with the FFPC. Joe Shane, the GM, said that he's trending to hopefully, and I put that in quotes for those of you listening, audio version of this podcast, be ready for the start of training camp. Nabers said, who was walking with a cane on the field as recent as like a few weeks ago, he said, look, my return date is going to be when my body feels right. I'm not coming back before that. And Pat Fitzmaurice from FantasyPros and I were talking about this last week. I said it was Joe Bartle from RotoWire. We were talking about this 2 weeks ago, and I said, this is refreshing for a player to come out and say this, that he's going to listen, when my body's right, I'll be out there, but I'm not going to push it myself before that, which I thought was great. Because this is looking out for the team. This is making sure that he's at his best and not, only giving 50% of what he could or 70% of what he could. Joe was like, no, this is completely selfish. This is him putting himself before the team. He's not playing until he feels. So there's two different ways to look at this, right? And I get what Joe was saying on this. The point is, it doesn't really matter what he said. The point is, he did say it. Normally, the player is most bullish on how far they are in rehab. And it seems like Nabers is the guy that's like the least positive about how this is coming along right now. I don't know, man. To soak an early second-round pick into Malik Nabers when you don't know if he's going to be ready for week 1, it seems aggressive, probably too aggressive for me.
Here's my take on that. With these early drafts, if you're taking Nabers, like at his ADP, you said 204.
Yeah.
Imagine a scenario where it rolls around, because this is a big tournament, right? So imagine a scenario Nabers is ready for training camp, like he's ahead of schedule and he's in training camp. And now his ADP, because he looks all systems go, is now 107 or 108. Now you got that, quote, betting term, closing line value there, getting the better price on Nabers. So I think that's the appeal with making that move, just taking a swing that maybe it goes right for you. And you got Nabers second round, when that's a lot, like that doesn't happen. No second round Nabers in July or August. And then you try to create a super team that way. But in your conventional league, like that most listeners play, that they're drafting in July, August, I totally get the risk. We're just gonna have to monitor it. But I mean,
and we'll have a lot more information on the injury by then too.
It's just so appealing with Jackson Dart, who looked like he could just chuck it downfield to him. He finally Nabers has a QB, and we've seen how talented he could be. So I do get wanting to take the risk with him. It just, you're gonna have to build your team accordingly in case he misses a couple weeks or takes time to get going.
Two things you made me think of with that answer. Number one, the Never-Too-Early tournament. I do think people are swinging for home runs, as they should. They should be swinging for home runs this early, because even if you strike out in the first round, you could hit a home run in the second. You could hit a home run in the sixth. You could hit a home run in the 10th. There are so many opportunities because value is going to fluctuate so much. And then this tournament gets cut off at the NFL draft. So then your opportunity for swinging home runs in this, it ends. And the other thing I'll bring up, and Ben, I'm pretty sure Ben Gretsch from Stealing Signals is the one who said this. Is the one I always attribute it to. He said it last year about Christian McCaffrey, and it turned out to be very correct. And he said, and I think this applies to every player every year. He said, you need with Christian McCaffrey, people need to stop thinking about, well, what happens if he gets hurt? They need to start asking themselves, what happens if he doesn't get hurt? And to your point, Frank, what happens if Nabers is ready? Don't say, well, what if he's not ready? Ask yourself, well, what if he is ready? Especially with this tournament, could be a very, very beneficial draft pick. Way to spend your 204 draft pick. Okay. Moving on to another receiver, NFL Network's Mike Garafolo says that the probable cause trespassing charges against Vikings wide receiver Jordan Addison are not going to be filed. This would probably not even come up in the rundown, Frank, but given that this is not Addison's first run-in with the law and the fact that they have to make a decision on his fifth-year option coming up soon, I'm wondering what you think about Addison from a fantasy standpoint, also considering J.J. McCarthy being his quarterback. Or are the Vikings more serious about bringing in a veteran, not only to back up McCarthy, but maybe take over the job from him to start the year off? I don't know.
I think the Vikings would be wise to bring in a veteran to push McCarthy in a QB battle. We saw how Bryce Young briefly going to the bench, it helped him in the end. Maybe they bring in Aaron Rodgers. There was whispers this past season. I think it's a good fit. Rodgers could probably get the offense back on track with in O'Connell's offense, and then you give McCarthy some time to reset, because it was just not good for him. And especially if Brian Flores returns as DC, which is looking likelier by the day, like, you don't want to waste these years of this defense. A great defense, and on offense, you have the pieces to contend. So I don't think they should be so patient with McCarthy. To that end, I think Addison could have a bounce back if they bring in a veteran like Rodgers, like I think. But I'm not saying I'm going to give up on McCarthy. I was high on him, but you can't be too overly patient. You need some kind of – you can't have Max Brosmer there. I know they had Wentz and then he got hurt, but you need a really good backup to make sure in case what we just saw happens again.
Just real quick on the Rodgers thing. I feel like the bad blood he had with the Packers, it may still be there. I don't know. But it's definitely taken a back seat to how he feels about the Jets and the Jets organization. If he were to go to Minnesota, he not only would get to play the Packers twice in 2026, he gets the chance to go back to MetLife Stadium to take on the New York Jets. There might be something to that. And he's probably not coming back to Pittsburgh because, Mike Tomlin was a big attraction for him for that job. Tomlin's not there anymore. I don't know.
You just made me think with that comment. What if he goes to the Dolphins? Packers DC as new head coach, but I don't think he was there when Rodgers.
Hafley was not there when.
No, but he'd get to play the Jets twice. But
yeah, he would. He absolutely would. Something to think about. And obviously, Hafley wasn't there when Rodgers was, but Jon-Eric Sullivan, the GM for Miami, he was there for the duration of his career. Okay. So there is, I don't know. We might be starting a rumor here tonight, Frank. You never know. Okay, let's wrap up with this. Brandon Beane, the president of football ops for Buffalo, the newly promoted Brandon Beane, said that Josh Allen could require offseason foot surgery. This was something that was bothering Allen. I would say the second half of the season, definitely the final third of the season for sure, and then throughout the playoffs. He's being drafted in the Never-Too-Early tournament right now with the FFPC as quarterback one. at the 305 in that. It's a single quarterback format. Do you have any trepidation if Allen ends up having offseason foot surgery about drafting him that high, Frank?
For me, it's more of the case that I just love Caleb Williams later in the draft, like we said, at QB 10, or trying to, hit on a discount with Jaden Daniels, who's still, he had such a spectacular rookie season, especially in fantasy, that the ceiling's so high. So I'd rather wait a couple rounds. That's why I'd be passing on Allen. But if you really want him, I wouldn't be too concerned about this surgery. I mean, you got to think their passing game will be better with the coaching staff change.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to think they'll make some kind of attempt to improve that receiving group. Maybe like a Rashid Shaheed, we'll have to see because he's a UFA. So I'm not too concerned about that. It's more that I just love the quarterbacks later in the draft in fantasy.
It makes perfect sense. If I'm going elite quarterback, I would have no problem with going with Josh Allen, even if he does have foot surgery. But I'm with you. I'm probably going to be waiting on quarterback and scooping up the value there. Frank, this was awesome. So glad to have you on. Remind us again, FantasyPros.com, RotoBaller.com, but the other websites that we can check out your work on.
Yeah, so you could check out some betting work on thegameday.com. I also have some work at Fantasy Six Pack and Pro Football Network. And then also there's a new site coming out that you'll see. Stay tuned with some other friends that I'm teasing out, but they don't want to say it yet.
Okay.
Just some extra work for them, but mostly fantasy stuff is RotoBaller and Fantasy Pros. And of course, always firing out takes on Twitter at Ammirante TFJ. Love talking sports on there. So hit me up if, I just love debating it. Even if we're just, chirping at each other, it's fun for me. So.
Last thing, I think I saw this on your X feed. You're saying New England over Denver, Los Angeles over Seattle this weekend?
Yeah, that's my pick. I just think the New England's defense is peaking at the right time. Obviously, Drake Maye gives them a massive advantage under center. Really, all the Broncos have going for them here for me is home field advantage. I think the Patriots get it done. And then the Rams and Seahawks. I know the Seahawks have been having an unbelievable season, but we've really seen Sam Darnold struggle against that Chris Shula defense, thrown 6 interceptions against the Rams this season. I know they had that crazy comeback on that Thursday nighter, but that felt like one of those wild games on a short week. I think the Rams get it done in this one. Should be a good game, though.
And Charbonnet is not there to pick up the random football 3-point conversion in the end zone. So I don't know.
Exactly.
It's going to be compelling. It's going to be a great Sunday of football. At F Ammirante TFJ for not only your take on those games, but everything else going on with fantasy football and fantasy baseball and betting as well. This was a lot of fun. Let's do it again sometime, Frank. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday evening.
For sure. Take care. Thank you.
You got it. MyFFPC.com is where to go. Dynasty Orphans, Never-Too-Early Superflex Best Ball Tournament, Never-Too-Early Best Ball Tournament, Big Gorilla and Baby Gorilla. Now, I want to thank Frank and our producer, Sean Engel. We'll be back at 7 o'clock next Thursday with player profilers Dan Fornek. Going to be a lot of fun. Enjoy the conference championships, everybody. For Sean Engel and Frank Ammirante, I'm Eric Balkman. This has been FFPC Insider Access, live on the Better Sports Network. Have a great weekend, everybody.